Welcome to the 22nd week after Pentecost. It is October the 20th, 2024. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast, where we as a community actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. The daily lectionary reading we explore together is the manna designed to nurture our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we share insights and interpretations from these readings that enrich our spiritual lives. The lectionary reading is from the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, and to fully grasp its depth, one must be familiar with the customs of the Old Testament. This understanding will serve as a foundation for exploring and interpreting the text. The writer, whose identity remains a mystery, has penned this book for a Jewish Christian community, possibly in Rome. This is well versed in the customs of the Old Testament. The writer's primary goal is to present the priestly ministry of Christ, who is superior to the angels, Moses, and the Mosaic law. This perspective will enrich our understanding of the priesthood and its significance in our faith. Now, in the lectionary text of Hebrews 5, verses 1 to 10, the writer will answer the question: how does Jesus qualify for the office of the high priest since he is not from the tribe of Levi as required under the Mosaic law? Jesus' lineage appears to disqualify him, and the lectionary text begins to respond to this problem. In verses 1 to 4, the writer states that Aaron and his descendants, the writer states how Aaron and his descendants, who followed him as high priest, came to their position. It was God who called and appointed them to represent the people in matters related to God and to offer sacrifices for sin. They did not try to grasp the office because that would disqualify them. And the qualifications of the high priest were humility and compassion. The high priest had to deal gently with the people's failings, but he also had to know his own failings. This meant he had to make a sacrifice for his sins as well as the people's. This humility and compassion set the high priest apart, earning him the respect and reverence of the community. Jesus also fulfilled the qualifications of humility and compassion. He did not presume to take the office of a high priest because it was God who selected him. And to support this claim, the writer quoted two references from the Old Testament. The first reference is Psalm 2, verse 7. You are my son. Today I have become your father. Now, the writer also used this verse of Psalm 2, verse 7, in the opening chapter of Hebrews 1, verse 5, to show that Jesus was superior to the angels. The second reference is Psalm 110, verse 4. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Jesus is a priest like Melchizedek who belonged to an older order of priests. Melchizedek lived around at the time of Abraham, and Abraham had fellowship with him when he was unsure what to do about a situation he had with his nephew Lot. You can read that story in Genesis chapter 13 to 14. Abraham's encounter with Melchizedek happened long before the tribe of Levi existed, showing that Christ had met the criteria. In verses 7 to 10 of our text, the writer will explore Jesus' second qualification, compassion, or we can use the other word, mercy. Despite his exalted status as God's Son, Jesus can sympathize with human frailty and limitations because while he lived on earth, he cried out in pain, he wept amidst difficult circumstances as he offered up priestly prayers to God. You might remember him crying out to God when he stood at the tomb of Lazarus, his friend. Or you can think of him on the cross crying out to his Father God. His prayers illustrate the depth of his identification with humanity that extended beyond prayer to obedience. Jesus learned obedience from what he suffered when he suffered and died as the Paschal Lamb on Good Friday. Jesus did not cling to his prerogatives as son. He learned how to respond to and obey God. That obedience is what qualified him for his service as a high priest. It demonstrates his capacity to sympathize with us in our own struggles. And because of his obedience, he has become the source of eternal salvation to all who will believe and obey him.